Thanks for coming out this morning. My name is Scott Spatz. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Administration at Cooperative Systems. I'm going to be kind of your moderator for the day today, taking questions from the group and facilitating all the different people we have involved in today's event. So just wanted to start off with just a little bit of not a whole lot of stats, but wanted to just kind of give you an overview of what we're seeing in the industry and why cybersecurity protections are so important for businesses, and not only large corporations, but of utmost importance for small businesses. Over 50% of small businesses have experienced and gone through some sort of ransomware or cyber attack within the past year. So over 50%. And that number just keeps increasing month after month too, and we're seeing it with our client base. We're seeing it within the industry events that we go to throughout the year. It's pretty crazy how much it's increasing in the small business sector. Hackers love small businesses just because the consensus and the assumption is that they don't have the resources and the time to allocate to solid cybersecurity practices and protections for their businesses. The answer to that is they're wrong, because there are very affordable, very doable, if you will, for lack of a better term, ways in which a small business can protect their organization, train their staff, put the specific protections on their network and their systems to make their environment much more secure. So when a cybersecurity breach occurs, there's a significant monetary impact to the business, which is much more of a monetary impact to a small business than to a larger corporation, just in terms of revenue generation by small businesses and bottom line profitability and the ratio, if you will. So not only do you have monetary impact, you have time being wasted from your staff by recovering from the breach, recovering from the data loss, productivity loss from your staff. When your systems are down, when you're dealing with those incidents, your staff is not productive, thereby costing you money. Reputation with clients is a huge component of it. So certainly you can recover from an incident or recover from a breach, but you have long-term impact by way of reputation damage with your clients and being down during that time, and the perception that you're not protecting them and their data as well. Not to mention, when you're down too, you're not generating revenue for your business either. So there's a lot of different components, and in that small business sector, it's very impactful. For a fraction of that monetary impact, spend your money on a solid cybersecurity program. It's not just about having an antivirus program or an anti-malware program within your environment. It's about having many layers of protections in place. It's about having regularly testing the protections you have in place too. So you can have all the protections in place, but if you don't test them, if you don't vet them and ensure that they're working properly and that they're solid, there's almost no point in doing it. It's also about having policies and procedures in place for your staff, so that not only you as the business owner or executives of the company know how to handle a cyber breach, your staff knows how to handle it as well, and what they should be doing in the event that something happens. And it's also about having trusted resources available to you. So being small businesses don't have all the resources, don't have huge staff in the technology space. It's about having trusted resources that you can turn to in the event that something does happen. So just want to take a quick poll of the room here. Who in this room has experienced any sort of cyber breach or ransomware attack or data loss or anything in their business? Raise your hands. So only a couple, really. Okay, that's great. That's great.
Okay.
Willing to admit, right?
Right, willing to admit.
Willing to admit.
Come on, don't be afraid. Admit it. It's okay. We're all among friends here.
Who in this room believes their business is well protected from a cyber breach and has a good, solid program in place? Okay. So that being said, today we're here to take a look at real-world scenarios that happen every day in every one of your companies. We're going to walk you through how cyber criminals work their way into your business, what things you should be aware of, and how to handle these scenarios. Then we're going to show you how easy it is for an attacker to gain access into your systems, the same systems that you may think are secure, by using readily available free tools that anyone can download from the internet. After that, we're going to review all the components of a successful cybersecurity protection framework. We're going to talk about proper insurance policies that you should have for your business and what protections they provide. Then we're also going to talk about legal protections, what you should have, and how you should protect yourself from a contractual perspective with not only your clients, but any vendors that you work with, as well as incident response policies, again, as I mentioned, for your staff, the owners or executives of your company, as well as your staff, what sort of policies they should be following when and if you do have an incident. We're going to review the legal steps you should take when and if you do have a breach, and what steps and actions you should take and what notifications you should make if something like that were to happen. And then we're going to wrap up the day discussing all the different layers of protection you should have in place on your network, on your systems, how you can monitor each of those layers and ensure they're doing their jobs and protecting the environment properly, and how you can train your staff and what sort of resources you have available to you for training your staff. So our goal for today is for you guys to leave here with actionable and affordable steps that you can all take in your business to make it more secure. And as I mentioned, we're also here to change that misconception that a solid cybersecurity framework isn't available to small businesses. As like I said, it very much so is available and affordable for businesses, small businesses. Questions. We encourage everybody to ask questions throughout the day. So raise your hand at any time, interrupt any of the presenters. Questions are great. There's also some paper and pens on the tables if you'd rather jot down questions throughout the event. Megan will collect those towards the end. We're going to do a Q&A session at the end after all the different presenters are done. So however you like to ask questions, if you want to jot them down or like I said, raise your hand. We love questions. Also, you're also welcome to grab one of these cybersecurity tip posters, as you can see on the front of the podium here. These are great little posters you can take, put them in your break room, put them somewhere in your office. It's a great reminder, just kind of top 10 tips for protecting yourself and your day-to-day use of technology, both personally and professionally. So it's great for people in your office, but it's also some good tips for as people use technology personally and how to protect themselves there. So let's get things started. I'm going to introduce our participants for today, and I thank everyone for being here. Their bios are all on your table, so I encourage you to kind of just read a little bit of their backgrounds. First up, we have Jeff Miller from Cyberstone Security. Jeff says he's a self-proclaimed real geek when it comes to cybersecurity. He's going to be leading a live demo today with his colleague Jerry. They're going to show you some real-world scenarios of how cyber criminals can work their way into your business, and they're also going to do kind of a live hacking demo. So Jeff, want to get us started?
Does this work? Can you guys hear me? All right, thank you. Yeah, I'll just probably move that aside. Thank you, Scott.
Very welcome.
All right, so like Scott said, the intent here isn't just talk at you today, but to make it interactive. So what we have up here is a video that we shot, sort of Blair Witch style, in-house. So if anyone remembers that movie, it was just a low-budget film. This is very much a low-budget film, maybe even a no-budget film. So I saw 5 or 6 hands, and some people sort of doing this, so maybe even more, on people who have been breached or had some kind of ransomware event, malware event, downtime, all of the above. So I know it's affecting some of you in the room, and it may soon affect others. The goal of this exercise is together, as a team, everybody in the room, have a conversation around how to handle a real live incident. We're going to take you through 2 common scenarios that can affect anybody in this room. So this isn't a healthcare specific or retail specific conversation. It doesn't matter if you're a government, non-for-profit, for-profit. This will affect anybody. Everybody in the room, I have to assume, is using the internet and using email. Is there anybody who's not? You had to sign up to Megan's lovely Evite to get here. So I know that we're all using those things, and that's how hackers are getting in. After we go through this video, we're going to show you how easy it is. And Scott mentioned that these are tools that are freely available online. So hackers don't have to go out and spend all this money to start a business. These cyber criminals can go out and get this stuff for free. And it's scary. We're going to show you that. It's going to be real cool to see a real live, how a real hacker would actually do this, okay? But more importantly, how you can prevent it, right? Not just to scare you guys, but just to show you how you can prevent it. So in this scenario, this is a healthcare facility, and they're about to experience something very common. The first one is going to be a funds transfer that wasn't initiated by an authorized source. And I personally know that this is happening a lot through phishing emails and things like that. So we're going to get into that. Like Scott said, we don't want to bore you with statistics today, but I do want to point out a few just before we get started here. So this is just a synopsis of the video that we're going to go over today. The first attack, like I said, phishing. And the second attack involves poor vetting of third parties. And in the front, you were mentioning that's a lot of sort of what you do, is helping manage that risk of third parties and things like that. So when we think of a third party these days, third parties can be your janitorial staff. It could be Amazon Web Services, Azure, it could be your managed IT provider. These are all third parties, right? Everybody remembers Target. The third party was the HVAC vendor. So everybody works with third parties to get things done. And not vetting them properly, not having a process, not having SLAs in place and expectations. And I love that you're shaking your head because we're in agreement here. It can put you at significant risk. So oftentimes people think of a breach as just an IT problem. They're not thinking of it as a problem that could, you could be attaching risk from a third party into your organization. Scott used the word reputation earlier, and I don't want to steal your thunder, sir, but cyber liability insurance is great, but it doesn't. There's no rider for reputation. It's not like you can pay somebody, $1 million and they're going to get your reputation back. It just doesn't work that way. So vetting out in advance is the way that we need to do. So again, we want to help you avoid mistakes that this company is about to make. All right, and just before the video, we're almost there. I know you're all on the edge of your seat. Phishing, so the Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report, has anyone heard of that? That's a lot of people, yeah. So a lot more than admitted that they were actually breached. So, for the last decade, for 10 years in a row, Verizon has basically surveyed companies to see how are people getting in, what are they call them attack vectors. So how are people getting in? What's the attack surface? So where are they weak? Where are these vulnerabilities? And what they're finding is that phishing accounted for 93% of social attacks. So phishing, I asked earlier, does anyone use email and web? And everybody said yes, unanimously. This stuff is getting right through your best firewall system. It's coming right in your front door, walking right into the living room. We talk about pretexting here. That's and Jared is very good at this, but social engineering. People contract us to walk into businesses. He did that, I think, yesterday. Walked into an insurance company, got right into the server room, was shaking hands with employees and sort of social pretexting. So that's another thing that we do. And pretexting is a way that anybody familiar with a used car salesman and the techniques that they use? Hackers are using the same techniques. They're relying on you being busy. They're relying on you being distracted. They're relying on you being nice, like holding the door for somebody who doesn't belong to your organization, and you're just, you got a package and you're fumbling with it. Oh, let me hold the door for you. So pretexting is something that's involved here. Obviously, email is how phishing attacks get in, and a lot of them. So about a third of these attacks are now targeted. So it used to be in the old days that attackers were sort of doing spray and pray. Broad spectrum attacks, see how many people will click if I send out 10,000 emails. Now they're starting to find personal details and information, now that social media is so prevalent, and sort of target their language in these phishing attacks to people. And without further ado, we're going to get into the video here.
For a spear phishing campaign, cool. So this guy's name is Oliver Miller. He's a chief financial officer at Northeast Unified Health Systems. He went to Duke University. You know what? I bet you that I can get this company to give us $30,000 just based on the fact that we know he's a chief financial officer and he went to Duke University. I can pretend to be somebody that he went to Duke University with, And, just trying to, trigger accounts payable person that way.
Wow, that sounds excellent, man. That's great.
Let me get this attack started and make some money. All right. Social engineer attack, spear phishing. Yeah. Subject of the email. Well, I'm on vacation. Yeah, we want this high priority. It's away.
All right.
Hey, dude, thanks for sending over that information, doing reconnaissance work for this phishing attack here. I think we're actually going to have really great success with it. Cool. Not only did we call out, accounts payable person by name, we were able to actually make it look like it's directly coming from Oliver. I think we're making easy $30,000 here. I also inserted a payload in there for keylogger, so maybe we can get some other information and send right back to us.
This keeps up on you in different states.
No, I hear this.
For a year for that.
No, I'm gonna get a lake house up in Lake George, and
Nice.
Yeah, they're not as glamorous as you expected, these hackers, right? So the way that this is going to work today is that I'm not here to just talk at you. I want this to be interactive. So look at the people at the table next to you. They're your new friends for the next hour, okay? So you saw what was happening. Hopefully the audio was clear in the back. Can you guys hear that okay? Was that loud enough? Okay. So amongst yourselves, there's 3 questions here. I want you guys to talk about these 3 questions. What's going on? What tools you think they were using? And you have an expert here, so this table's lucky. And then what is the anatomy of a spear phishing attack? So there were some keywords. It's okay if you don't have a full answer on everything. After 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to come together as a team and we'll talk, allow somebody at the different tables talk about what you guys came up with collectively. So go ahead and talk amongst yourselves. Tell me what you think is going on. So this table here, whoever wants to be a representative, what do you think is going on in that scene with these 2 hackers?
They're plotting, they're scheming.
They're plotting, okay. What are they about to do?
They're targeting a specific individual to try to extract money based upon his or her contacts with somebody else in the organization that's higher up.
That's exactly what's going on. That's perfect. What are they using? What tools are they using? Somebody from the table over here.
They're using LinkedIn and Facebook.
LinkedIn. Did you think that those would be considered tools for a criminal?
No.
And they are. So you think of it as just a basic thing that you go on and try to make yourself look good and for the rest of the world. But these are tools that they're using, and LinkedIn is a big one. Because now I know that Scott is related to Steve because Scott has this role and Steve has this role. So they would likely be conversing about X, Y, and Z based on their roles. So I can sort of, that term pretext, I can pretext that, and maybe I know that Steve happens to be going on vacation soon. So, Scott would normally tell Steve, hey, wire some funds, and so I'm gonna take advantage of the fact that Steve's gonna be out of the country and Scott can't get a hold of, so this is sort of what's going on. And you think of hacking as like all these bits and all these bytes, but a lot of times this is really what's going on, right? It's the used car salesman type thing. They're convincing people. The table in the back there, what is the anatomy of a spear phishing attack? And maybe what is a spear phishing attack if you know?
Specifically targeting individuals within an organization rather than trying to just blanket attack.
Right.
So like, to your point, they know so-and-so's on vacation, they know who typically would be the person to wire funds, they're specifically contacting them, using the fact that somebody is on vacation, and knowing specific details about their environment before they send the message out.
Right. And you think about a website. Everybody here's got a company website. You go to About Us. There's a lot of information there, right? People's faces, their email addresses, their titles, maybe even short bios. So not that you should immediately rip that stuff down after leaving here today. Some companies we work with do choose to do that, but that's one of the ways that when Jared goes and does a penetration test on a company, he'll scrape all the details he can get from a website. Because think about it, jmiller@cyberstonesecurity.com, it's likely that jmiller is going to be a password that I use to log into my system, on my VPN and various other systems. So that just makes it easy for somebody like Jared to start off with jmiller and then just throw a dictionary attack at it. right? And if you're familiar with that, that's just trying a bunch of passwords in rapid succession, thousands per second. This is how this stuff is going down in the real world. So good job, guys, on this side of the room. We're going to get to you guys on the next set of questions, and we're going to just play this next clip. With minimal ado. You know what, Tara? I can't wait to go on vacation.
What days are you going? So how my calendar?
Yeah, November 20th through the 29th.
All right, awesome. 20th through the 29th. Jeez, I wish I was going on vacation that long.
Seriously, I haven't taken a vacation this long in a while, so it's going to be awesome.
That's right, man. I'm making all the time. So I'm closing the books at the end of the month for you. So that way everything closes out. So when by the time you get back on the first, it won't even be a big deal.
Thanks again for taking care of everything, Loco.
Absolutely, Honor.
This one doesn't take a lot of thinking. So we saw what happened. I'm just going to pick on the table in the back, so think on your feet. The question here is, what is glaring about Oliver Miller's, and that's my 5-year-old son, by the way, it's in memory of it. Someday he'll see this and go, Dad, what were you doing? What is glaring about Oliver Miller, the CFO's social media use? Back table over there.
Too much information.
TMI. That's exactly right. You don't need to be sharing that with the world. First of all, it's not Facebook, so we don't need to know that you're eating a sandwich right now. And people in these C-level roles, president, owner, roles like this is stuff, when robbers come in your neighborhood, they're looking for when the lights are off, they're looking for the newspapers are piled up in the, in the driveway. This is the digital version of that. And now you're just making it obvious. So this is where you're showing some vulnerability. You're probably not going to be around, so now you're ripe for an attack, okay? I think everybody can understand that. That's not rocket science. So good answer on the back table there.
Gosh, I should didn't have to work for 9 days with my boss. 4 days, what kind of vacation is that? $30,000 wired to Upstate Medical Supply?
I'm going to pause this here. This is very hard to see. I did a couple times. I mentioned used car salesman, right? What you see here is so Tara, who is the in accounting with Oliver Miller, who's the CFO. She's receiving an email, and they're saying it's hard to see here, so that's why I'm telling you. There's a routing number in here. Upstate Medical Supply. So if you think back to the social pretexting, this guy said, yeah, I went to Duke University with Oliver, and I work for a medical supply company. They're offering a huge discount, used car salesman type words. They're even providing a phone number. And you might think, well, hackers don't provide phone numbers. And in fact, they do. These criminal organizations oftentimes have numbers, and they'll help you, sort of in air quotes here, help you through the process as they're taking your money or your Bitcoin these days. And there's another thing is, so there's a request to wire, but there's always a call to action. There's always an immediate, like, this has to happen now. So looking out for that sort of language should be a red flag. So there's several red flags here. And if you're doing well in your organization, you're engaging your employees and training them on a regular basis so that they're seeing things like this and they're able to mentally process the several red flags that are on here.
I mean, he does know him, and all right, I'll already got it, man.
All right, 2 minutes, and then I'll pick on these two tables. So what controls could be in place within your organization to prevent this money from being sent? So Tara's about to wire some money. If you guys just want to do popcorn, we don't even have to, it looks like you're ready to go.
I think in my company, nothing of that value goes out without a pre-qualified vendor.
And so what's the translation of that? There's procedures. Right. Written, stated, understood, reviewed procedures. So I like
with multiple sign-offs, a number that big.
Right. So there's, I don't know why that keeps happening.
backup. We need AV backup.
I'll just stand like this. So that's right. So having, it's like, think about the United States. They don't just launch an intercontinental ballistic missile from one guy. There's always two guys involved, right? So it's the same thing. We're not wiring money just because there's one person. Well, these days, who knows? We have a big button, I was told, you know, bigger than the North Korean.
Override.
Yeah. So maybe a bad example. Front table here. I know you personally deal with this, but anybody here at the front table want to weigh in?
What's that, lack of dual control? So like you were saying, she was authorized just to send the money out.
Yep.
There was no verification done whatsoever with Oliver as to whether or not it was valid or not.
Right, so she's just wiring money. And you think this doesn't happen, it happens. So I did a similar presentation at an basically a convention of HR folks. And these guys, there was an HR manager from a steel manufacturer, they make like rebar firm, and afterwards he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, you guys, you have to come to my organization and teach my people. We just had a $30,000 wire transfer last week.
But you need to support your people so that they do feel that they can question something coming from an executive level.
I like it. Did you guys hear that in the back? There needs to be support so that they feel like they can talk to you and that sort of thing. Did you want to elaborate any more on that? That was a good point.
Well, a lot of people are afraid to question what like the CFO has said, so that's part of your training, saying it's okay to come and ask us, did you really send this to check on something? But it's more important to have those dual controls.
Right.
But I think you still have to let your employees know it's okay to question.
Right, and so some of that comes down to company culture even, right? Not being so rigid all the time that, I get afraid to bother somebody, so I'm just gonna hurry up and get this done. Right, so that's exactly right. So good answers on these guys.
One more control that is important there too is use the phone number is to verify with the number that's on file, not with the number that's in the email.
Right, and I put a 555 number on there, so it wasn't a real one, obviously, but that's exactly right. And sometimes if I'm not sure of what I'm getting, I'll Google it. Like this company, who's this company? Upstate Medical Supply. And if there's nothing on Google, they're probably not a real company, right? Or if that number is not on the first, couple pages there on Google, it's probably not legit. But that's a very good point that you make.
Hey Oliver, how was your vacation?
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, went out on the lake, did some biking, a lot of cool stuff.
That's awesome. It was super short.
Yeah.
Hey, would you mind reaching out to Upstate Medical Supply?
Who? Upstate Medical Supply?
Yeah,
Okay.
I wired that money over for you, and I had to see
What?
you asked me to wire some money over?
Whoa. Wire? Listen, I asked you to close the books out. Thank you for doing that. I didn't ask you to wire any money. I didn't even
I have an email from you.
No, I didn't even have access to any cellular data. How much money are we talking about?
$30,000. Let me call the bank.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not a big deal.
It's a big deal.
I'll call them.
Yeah, call them. Thank you.
I'm normally not that mean. But this, Scott made a good point earlier. So just to elaborate on a good thought is that you're gonna have to spend money at some point, right? So you can do it in a controlled fashion, and it's typically less expensive to do that, or in uncontrolled fashion, and then emotions start to get implied. You see how the temperament started to go up, and now she's going like this, and it's just not a good vibe going on right now. And this is when mistakes get made, right? So having a plan, an incident response plan before this sort of thing, having controls in place, having policies and procedures in place, like you mentioned, to have two people involved. Doing that in advance costs far less money than what they're dealing with now, right? $30,000 is a pretty price to pay just because somebody's responding to a fake email. 60 seconds amongst yourselves. What do you do now? So your tables talk amongst yourselves and we'll go around. Right here, I specifically, man, you had heard some good things from you, so I'm going to pick on you on this one. Yeah, I liked what I heard. So why don't you share what your answer is? What do you do now?
Well, the first thing would be if you have a board of directors, shareholders, you have to report to the company so that you have it publicly announced that this happened. Yes.
Yeah.
Second thing would be to insurance or lawyer, you know, if you have involved, you have to immediately contact them, you know, so that you could utilize their resources. And then the third, I would say just report it to the local police, FBI, whoever, you know, I don't know that part. But
yeah, so that's an interesting one. On that third topic, who to report to. So first of all, and you mentioned, I'm gonna do number 4 for you. I'm gonna steal it from you and make it mine. So I also heard have a plan. So if you had a plan in place, you would theoretically be following it right now. So ultimately that's the right answer. And then the components of what you're saying right now would be in the plan. Right? So that's the whole idea here. This is the incident response plan. We're just following it now. Instead of having our hair on fire, we're in a controlled manner. We're activating phone calls. You know, IT needs to get involved. And is this contained? Is anyone else getting phishing emails? Legal, maybe insurance, right? And then depending on your vertical and depending on what regulations affect you, there's mandatory cyber reporting requirements. Sometimes on a state level, sometimes, you know, if you're processing credit cards, there's PCI, insurance, banking, financial services, there's mandatory requirements there for reporting. So you need to know, if you are under any sort of regulation, you need to know what those cyber reporting requirements are, so that you're not, if it's a 72-hour window, that you're not, you know, doing it in 2 weeks, and then you guys are getting a big fine because you didn't play by the rules. The table over behind. Would you say anything differently than what was said, or anything additional?
The only thing I think we would add is, as part of the incident response plan, is from a public relations perspective. I mean, depending on the size of your company, you might have internal.
PR. You just said PR, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and that's right. The larger the company, the more likely, you know, and companies who can afford it oftentimes have retainers for this. So this is containing the message. It's containing and maintaining reputation. What are your employees saying internally? What are they saying on social media? Can we get that message out to make sure that they're not out there, hey, I work for ABC Corp and they're just getting slammed right now. There's lock screens up, ransomware happening. That should not be happening, right? And the messaging that we give to the public, to our customers, we don't want to lie, but we have to say things carefully so that there's not a perception that we're out of control or that we didn't have a plan. So I like that a lot. Any other thoughts here? Anybody on this side?
Well, like you said, getting IT involved, because they got the phishing email, what else came with it, and if they were going to put a keylogger, if they had a payload.
Yeah, you remember that one, good memory. Yeah, it's important to get IT involved right away, immediately, and have them look at containment and things like that. But then the document shouldn't end there, right? You're talking about PR, you're talking about legal, you're talking about insurance, you're talking about internal messaging. This is all super important. So your incident response plan shouldn't just be go to your backups. Well, first of all, it doesn't help you in a wire transfer situation, but if it involves ransomware, things like that, yeah, you have to do that, but that's not where it ends, right? So having it be comprehensive, involving people within and outside of your organization is incredibly important.
Thank you for calling Tri-City Savings Bank. If you wish to speak to an employee whose extension you know, you can enter the extension at any time. To repeat this menu, please press 6. Sorry, that is an invalid option. Where's this? Sorry, that is an invalid option. Sorry, that is an invalid option. One moment, you are now being transferred to an operator.
Tri-City Savings Bank, this is Josh.
Hi Josh, this is Tara. I'm calling, and I'm actually hoping I could read it under wire transfer that I need an error.
Okay, unfortunately, we aren't able to reverse wire transfers. What we usually suggest is reaching out to the receiving company, as usually they'll work with you.
Wow. Okay, Josh, I know that's probably your policy, but this is actually a very big deal. Is there anything you can do to kind of help me out? My boss is kind of freaking out over here.
Unfortunately, there's not.
Oh my god, this is terrifying. Okay, bye. Hey, great. Just a second.
Not really.
It's really important, actually. So I called the bank.
Yeah, I'm sure you gotta take care
It
of
went
that.
actually badly.
What?
So they said I couldn't get that back.
Wait a second. Wait, $30,000.
Right.
Did you give them any pushback?
They said that there's nothing they can do. That I have to call the person that the wire was to. I know it's a lot of money, I just don't know what else to do.
No, but that's $30,000. That's your salary. That's how much I paid you.
Right, I know. I feel terrible.
Yeah, I can't afford to pay both you and hackers at the same time.
So you're firing me?
Yeah, I'm firing you.
I'm fired?
You're fired.
Fantastic.
That's cold.
Yeah. So I know. I saw the faces in front. I know there's going to be some opinions there. So we don't have to. There's another scenario I want to get into. Wrap this one up, and we'll get into that one. But that was cold, right? You know, she's been a loyal employee, presumably for years, and these guys sit next to each other. It's a very small environment, and then she did one thing, and she just got fired. So was it justified? Does anyone think it was justified?
It was knee-jerk, I don't know.
It was knee-jerk. It happened quick, in a hallway there. So
there really weren't any policies for her to
Just gonna say,
follow, so she didn't really do anything.
if there were policies in place and there had been training in place and there had been, protocols and regular review of.
this wouldn't happen in the first place, right? So what about Oliver? I mean, isn't that really his responsibility, right, as the CFO to be implementing these things? Right, he's presumably got a paycheck that's a little more than $30,000. I'm sorry for Tara, but she just got fired, right? And it is the responsibility of upper management to write these procedures, write these policies, and instill them down on the employees. So I do think that this was a knee-jerk, to your point.
Can I ask if there wasn't even an investigation? Maybe there were policies and she didn't follow them. There was just, there's not enough facts there.
There's not enough facts, too. That's exactly right, and that's part of the Blair Witch appeal here. But yeah, we don't know the whole backstory. The idea is to get everybody thinking, right? And again, think about put in this through the lens of your own company right now, and where you think that you can improve or do better. Write a note, right? So that's the idea. Everyone remembers the recent breach. 143 million Americans' credit information was basically compromised. The CISO there got fired, right? Do you think that was justified?
Well, that's the person who should have had policies in place.
Yeah. Now, it was, somebody didn't patch, so it was sort of a benign thing, but also an egregious thing. So they had this public-facing web server. When I say public-facing, it was internet accessible. They didn't patch it. It was vulnerable. Hackers could get access to all this information. So yeah, it was a simple fix, but egregious nonetheless in the scope. I do think that was justified. Does anyone have a different opinion on that? No? Okay. Good answers. Everybody's doing great here. So we're going to wrap this one up. There's a second scenario. I'll respect everybody's time. I know we're coming up on 10 o'clock here. So just a little bit of ado. I'm going to use that term again. So second scenario here. If you don't patch early and often, you're at risk of a breach or ransomware attack. It's a fact. Practicing good patch management is critical in maintaining a secure environment. It's a fact. Poor security results in organizational cost increases. We mentioned you could spend money now, you could spend it later. You don't want to have poor security because it's a lot more expensive than doing things up front. I think everybody can probably nod their head to this. Yeah, that makes sense. This isn't rocket science here. These are just some facts. So same company, 6 months later, round 2. Third party, janitor.
So you had the chance to read my resume. I showed up, I have all the qualifications, background, a lot of experience in this field. What do you think? You need just some background checks, you need some references. What can I do to help you make you feel comfortable about giving me this job?
Well, you're obviously qualified, and we'd like to hire you. We've already checked your references, and we're doing a background check. Once that's clear, we'll give you a call to get started.
Good. Sounds good. Thanks. Looking forward to working with you guys.
Welcome aboard.
Thanks.
These background checks are just so expensive. Look at these prices. I can't believe the prices these days. I'm just going to do a basic background check. It has to be good enough.
It's a little bit hard to hear. She said, comprehensive background checks are so expensive these days. What's going on? So in that scene, what's happening here? Just popcorn. Anybody can shout out. Or I'll call on a table. In the back?
So I think she's trying to do the right thing in her line from saving the company money, not knowing that she's going to just do a cursory look and there's some hidden gems that she's not going to find.
Yeah.
He seems so nice.
And look at him, he's got a good personality, his hair's flipped up, he's nodding.
And you think he's just a janitor.
Right.
He's not going to have access.
No, he's just a janitor, he's not gonna do anything except he's got the master key, but that's besides the point, right? You can get anywhere, right? So that's what's going on. Did you have something you want to add, Jared? No? Okay. So that's exactly what's going on. And this guy could be great in the state of Connecticut, right, in terms of a basic background check, but who knows if he was a serial killer down in Florida or whatever, right? So this is, if you're gonna vet people out for, and you're gonna pay them a salary of $80,000 or whatever, what's another $50, right, up front? I mean, come on, people. It's, penny wise, pound foolish is what they call that. What oversight should be in place now that you've hired a third-party vendor?
Business associate agreement.
Business associate agreement, so specifically in the healthcare field, that's the term that you would use there. Business associate agreement, what other things should be in place for oversight now that you're basically assuming the risk, right? So, for example, State Farm. Non-disclosure, okay, that's a good one. Right, that's right off the bat, right?
Insurance.
Insurance, okay?
Full background check.
Full background check, yeah, so comprehensive, not the basic one. Think about it, anybody moving to the cloud or has moved to the cloud, Office 365, any of that stuff, yeah? So that's a third-party vendor. What SLAs do you have in place, right? If things go down, right, and you can't access it and you have 200 employees or whatever the case is, how does that affect you financially and how are you holding these cloud providers responsible, right? I mentioned Office 365. Let's get a 30-day retention period by default. So if you're in legal or if you're in a field where you need to get that data longer than 30 days back, you could potentially be screwed if you're not thinking about these things when you're moving to the cloud. So I often, and this is just a small rabbit hole here, but I often tell people moving to the cloud is a good idea. You're generally going to have more availability because it's smart engineers, the data is replicated all over the place. But moving to the cloud doesn't necessarily mean there's just an inherent security. Has anyone heard of Meltdown or Scepter? These things that are on the radio, on the news, this Intel, yeah, you have, pen tester guy. So basically, for the last 10 or 15 years, Intel's been putting out processors that have a wicked vulnerability. So people in the cloud thought that, well, my data's in this little container, and nobody else's data, or nobody else in this container can get into my data. It's containerized. Well, this new vulnerability is saying that that's actually not the case. So this, don't just think I'm secure and just have a happy wish that that's the case. That's the point. I was starting to say earlier, we'll move on here, State Farm. You guys are familiar with State Farm? I know you guys are familiar with insurance, being in Hartford. So State Farm, so we had a company who's a forensic accounting firm. They go in and look and see if people are cooking the books, so to speak. They work with State Farm. State Farm says, we don't want to even talk to you or do business with you unless you have a full security assessment done by an objective third party. So that could be something, right? You don't want to assume the risk of somebody who's less secure than you, right? So that's one thing.
Wow, it was really crazy that happened last Thanksgiving. Do you remember that AT girl got fired? She broke the shot. It was crazy. She just, hey guys, what's up? Hey, who are you? I'm the janitor. I just got changed to TP in the men's room. Okay. Have a good day, guys. Just lock up and leave.
That's not what it looks like. So if you ladies were wondering what the TP looks like, this is meant to be, to be light, because security can be boring if you don't make it fun. Should the janitor be allowed to wander through the building?
Sure. After hours, you have to have a badge. He just could have been anyone. He even showed his ID.
Some access control, right? So, on a door, typically there's access control. You beep in. In fact, to get in the Hartford Club, if you've got to beep in to go and from the garage up, right? So that's absolutely. So if something did happen, you would be able to say at this time, this person was there, right? So there's at least some accountability. Any other thoughts or contrary thoughts on this one? I mean, he's got to do his job, obviously. He's got to, go around and do things. What possible dangers could third parties such as the janitor, and don't just think the janitor, think of any company that you interface with, what possible dangers could they introduce to your company? Back table, you've been quiet, and then we'll go over to you. So, yeah, I'm picking on you. So that second question there.
Could be theft. I mean, he could steal data, he could steal assets.
Yeah. So I mentioned, to your point, I mentioned Jared did a physical pen test yesterday at a large insurance company, got right into the server room. I mean, if I'm in the server room, there's your crown jewels.
I'm into vice presidents and presidents' offices as well. And I even took stuff not only off the computer, but just what was laying on the desk.
Yeah, I mean, just think about what you have, important things that you're working on. That's right on your desk. So that's, right? So you got to think about that stuff. So we tell people clean desk policy. So if you're leaving, just throw it in your drawer, lock the drawer. That doesn't take more than 2 seconds to do. It doesn't cost you any money. Good point. Scott, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, well, similar to data theft is, certainly third parties, if they have, and it could be a warranted reason for having a laptop or a device that they bring onto the network that they need to plug in to do their job or provide whatever service they're providing to the company. Are there protocols around how they're connecting and whether they have access to your network or not?
Right.
Similar to for the same reason of data security and data loss.
Yeah, that's a good point. So most companies have a separate guest wireless network, and it's segmented off so that they can't get into your regular workflows and things that people are doing internally. That's an example. Network access control, stuff that Cooperative Systems deploys on a regular basis. So there's things, sign-in sheets. Some of it's IT, some of it's technical, some of it's not. Like are you logging visitors, and are you so yesterday I was in a financial firm in Western New York, and they escorted me through the building, so I wasn't just like wandering like Jared was yesterday, wandering down the halls of this company, snapping photos and things. I was escorted out, and not that they didn't trust me, but they're just not going to put themselves at risk. Okay? Yeah, those are great answers. We're just about wrapped up here on my section.
You're never even going to see this camera place here. I don't have to hack past any of your technology, and soon your business will burn!
So Blair Witch.
Another Monday morning. I love this coffee. It's the only way to start my Monday morning. Now it's time to see what credentials we captured on this.
All right. In the interest of time, we have other presenters here. We're going to speed this up. What's a table who's been quiet? This table here, the second table back. Answer that question for me. What is the janitor trying to steal here? What's he doing?
He's trying to get passwords, the sign-in.
Yeah. So even though it's blanked out on the screen with the little dots when you logged in, he's got a video camera right on this guy's keyboard. So over here, she's typing her password, and I've got a video camera right here, right? So, and you can't really, that's not going to show up in your logs. It's not going to be on your firewall. It's not going to show up in Active Directory. So this is just a way that people are doing it physically. Dumpster diving. Have you guys heard of dumpster diving? Okay, a lot of information you can get via dumpster diving. So he's trying to steal credentials, right? Username, password, that sort of thing. So that's exactly what's going on. And this janitor is a little bit goofy. I feel like they didn't do a good job vetting him out. He's sweeping the carpet. He's installing very large toilet paper in the men's bathroom. So he's displaying pretty nefarious behavior there.
It absolutely does happen, though. There was one of the hospitals that we work with. They had a hacker come in and change every patient's name in the system to hello. Every time.
I'm not laughing.
No,
yeah, that's awful.
Just really embarrassing. Every patient's name, they couldn't find patients, and so it was a big deal. It was a really big deal, and it was all over the news because everybody's like calling their family. Every patient's name is hello. You know, with smartphones and texting, and it's hard to
contain.
To squash that.
Yeah, it is. It is. And you know, somebody mentioned a PR. Gentleman in the back mentioned PR, right? So they can help, right? It is hard though, and sometimes it's unavoidable in some cases. You might want to get that screen on if you need to. So I'm gonna basically. So very good job, everybody. All good answers on that. Hopefully, did everyone think? Do you think you learned at least one thing that you can do better today than what you were doing when you walked in? Okay, that's the goal. So basically what we're going to do now is we're going to go into a live hacking demo. I think there's a break. Megan, is there a break shortly after this?
Immediately after.
So just a little preface here. Scott, you did a good job mentioning that some of these hacking tools are freely available on the internet. You can pull up your smartphone right now and just Google hacking tools. And you get a wealth of information, tutorials, people helping you out, forums, blogs. So this stuff isn't, there's some advanced techniques, but a lot of the stuff that people can do and that people are doing can be done with freely available tools and a whole wealth of support and information from these criminal folks, both on the regular internet that we know and on the dark web. You guys familiar with the dark web? So there's a whole other internet out there that isn't, there's no Google for it, there's no directory, there's no listing, but there's a whole other internet that's accessed through what they call the Tor browser. And it's these websites, they're onion sites is what they call them. But this is where people are sharing very, very bad things, right? Tools that are used in cyber warfare, child pornography, stolen credit card information, that stuff is going on there. So the hackers tend to share their information in these areas, not only on the public internet, but oftentimes in the guise of the dark web. And so if you have ever been, has anyone ever received a letter that you've been breached or you were part of a breach? Okay, I got one from my health, I'm not going to name the name, but my healthcare company that my personal information was stolen in a breach. So that sort of freaked me out. So that information oftentimes ends up on the dark web for hackers, and there's money attached to it. In fact, and you can probably attest to this, medical records provide more money than credit card information to these bad guys. So what Jared has here is one of the most common tools that the good and bad guys use in hacking. So we do it as white hat hackers, which is ethical hackers that try to help you find your weaknesses and avoid getting hacked by the real guys. This is Kali Linux. Again, it's a free open source tool and it's running a piece called Metasploit. So the Metasploit framework is what penetration testers, aka white hat hackers, use. And what we're going to do here is instead of having him type a bunch of boring commands and put you guys to sleep, we're going to speed that up with a process, this Armitage thing here.
If I butt in right.
Yeah, butt in loudly.
I want you guys, could everyone hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So, with what should be coming up on the screen in a second. So this is just normal Windows 7 machine, right? Most people use Windows 7, Windows 10. So you log in, looks perfectly fine. There's nothing, just a normal computer. Well.
So Windows 7, a lot of people are running in your organization. Windows 10. The second attack, and Joe, we've got to be aware of time here. The second attack that happened was on this system. It was an unpatched system. So yeah, it's great that you're running Windows 7 and Windows 10, but if you're not patching it, what we're going to show you here, anybody remember WannaCry? Does anyone need me to explain WannaCry? I'm happy to. So about this time last year, spring of last year, global ransomware outbreak, epic proportions, countries all over the place, all over the world, got affected by this ransomware that was running rampant. You know, ransomware is essentially a piece of malware or malicious software that basically goes out to your network drives. You know, if you have a network drive where you're sharing files, and it starts to rip through them, encrypt them, make them gobbledygook. So that's what this ransomware was. This was all over the news, it was on the radio. You couldn't avoid it. You couldn't get to work without hearing about it 3 times last spring. So this ransomware outbreak used a tool that got made available by the shadow brokers, which is a hacking group, criminal hacking group. They stole some exploit kits from the NSA, right? So we have a big cyber component of our national defense and the NSA, who are constantly trying to fend off these hackers and you know, protect our critical infrastructure and so on. This bad group got access to some of the exploit kits that they use, and they incorporated them into the WannaCry ransomware that had global reach. So it was a very nasty event. It was billions of dollars. A lot of logistics companies, FedEx and things like that got affected, so it really affected people's lives. What we're going to show you here is how, using free open source software, we can run that same exploit. And he's running the commands now. On a vulnerable, unpatched Windows 7 laptop on this side, he's running just a few commands here to exploit it. And have you just owned it?
Yeah, I just got into the first part.
Okay, just a few steps here. Again, the system could easily be patched if you have a managed IT company or an internal IT folks. They can easily patch this, but the fact is that a lot of them are missing patches and people aren't doing a good job. So you need to be paying close attention to your patch management. Otherwise, we can run software like this.
At this point, I've now taken over this computer, and I have, as it is in the tech world, God. So I am this computer. I could do simple things as far as they were saying, keyloggers. I could start keylogger, anything you type on here, password, whatever, I can now watch you, and you'll never even know that I'm on. I could do simple things like going to here. I'll take a screenshot. I now just took a screenshot of this, and you have absolutely no idea that I ever did that, and I'm watching it. And I can take it every 10 seconds or even faster. Now I'm watching what you have on there. I could also see the processes that are running on the computer. I could even go and do a hash pump, which is essentially when you put in your password, it's going to what's called a SAM file, and it's checking those passwords.
Show them, so we planted some files on this laptop over here. This is the scary thing to me. So oftentimes you store personal information. If you're in accounting, you may have stuff, you know, that you don't want other people to see. If you're in HR, maybe social security numbers of your employees and stuff like that. So we've put some files on this Windows 7 workstation, and the attacking system over here has, basically right now we're looking at the directory contents of that workstation right there. This is how hackers can completely own you, and we've been doing it. This is 10 minutes. 10 minutes. We first did a vulnerability sweep. We found that Windows 7 system was unpatched. Knowing that it was unpatched, there's this freely available tool on the internet that any hacker can use. Jared's going to show you how you can get right to the information here on that system, view it, steal it, and then hey, after we steal the information, why not just wipe our access logs out so that nobody knows we got in?
This looks interesting. Employee salaries.
Yeah, let's open that. Employee salaries. Open up passwords, that one looks good too. So again, the components here of what these bad guys are doing, they're doing a vulnerability discovery, they're finding out where you're weak. Oftentimes it's the systems that are facing the internet. Sometimes they can get right past your firewall by just sending you a simple email. And that email may say, click this link. From there, it takes you to a website that's got malicious stuff on it. That gets downloaded to your system. So they do it in steps like this. Start with the social engineering, start with email, download this stuff on your system. And, oh, look at this, what's this? Okay, married, single, physicist, email addresses. All right, so we're looking at a file on this system over here, and now this hacker has access to your information.
And here's the password.
Okay, so again, it's very easy to do, free open source stuff, doesn't require a lot of effort. Not saying that Jared's not a good, smart guy here, but this is why you need to have good patch management in place. It's why you need to have a good incident response plan in place. So that's essentially it. I don't know if you have anything else you want to show them.
No, I essentially could see everything you guys are doing.
With the keylogger, if you go in and change your password, even if you make it 16 characters with special digits, or the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, something this long, it doesn't matter. If there's a keylogger on it, he's got your password. It doesn't matter how complex you make it. Okay, so this is the real deal. We're not here to scare you. We're here to help you shed a light on areas of risk and know what to do now that you know where the risk is. So do you want to, who's up here next? Okay, break? Okay, any questions before we go on break? I know you guys...
Question. So with regards to file storage,
yeah.
Do you recommend cloud or do you recommend a hard drive? What is your recommendation if you don't want to leave it on the laptop itself?
Right, so first and foremost on file storage, I recommend most folks are in an Active Directory environment. You're running Windows, I think most of you, most of the world, is have good group policy that enforces profiles to be loaded so that they're saved, files are saved to the network. That's what I recommend. It's really what you should do first. The right answer here, when I put on my consulting cap here, is you should really do a risk assessment first of your business, right? Because I might say that for you, but then that may not be appropriate if you have remote workers and things. So there's a lot of factors. So you really need, before you start making investments in technology and security controls, you got to do a baseline analysis. Where's my risk? Not where's your risk, not where's his risk, where's my risk? I don't even care if we're in the same industry, in the same town. Things are different. So where's my risk in my company? From that, I now know what I have to do about it. So now I like your point earlier about having procedures in place, right? So Tara, with 2 people and a wire transfer. So I take where is my risk? I have written procedures, I have written policies, an incident response plan, things like this. And then I can spend money on technical controls wisely. So I wouldn't start this way, I would start this way to answer the question. Now, I'm not trying to get around the question. It's a good question, but start off with a baseline. File level encryption is very cheap these days, so if this Windows 7 laptop had file level encryption, it doesn't matter that he stole that file, it wouldn't mean anything to him. It would be all garbly good. So anybody in any vertical should invest in file level encryption if you can afford it. Makes a lot of sense. It's not hard to do. Okay, that's great. You guys did a good job answering the questions. 15-minute break, and then we'll get to the next presenter.